Hari Goshani Hari Bale Anandita Mama. Nana, various, Bhava, Udgama, ecstatic symptoms, Dehi, in the body, Adbhuta, wonderful, Nartana, dancing, Dui Goshani, the two Goshanis, Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Prabhu, Hari Bole, chant Hare Krishna, Anandita, pleased, Mana, mind. Translation. While Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Prabhu danced and chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, there were various ecstatic symptoms in their bodies, and their minds were very pleased. Please repeat. While Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Prabhu danced and chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, there were various ecstatic symptoms in their bodies, and their minds were very pleased. No purport, so we'll read text 22, 23 and 24. Actually, we'll go through quite a few here. I'll just read the English translations. While all of them danced, Gopal, dancing and dancing, fainted and fell to the ground unconscious. Advaita Acharya Prabhu became very unhappy. Taking his son on his lap, he began to chant the Nrsimha mantra for his protection. Advaita Acharya chanted various mantras, but Gopal did not come to consciousness. Thus all the Vaishnavas present cried in sorrow at his plight. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then put his hand on the chest of Gopal and told him, "My dear Gopal, get up and chant the holy name of the Lord." When he heard this sound and felt the touch of the Lord, Gopal immediately got up, and all the Vaishnavas chanted the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in jubilation. Translation. The other sons of Advaita Acharya were Sri Balaram, Swarup and Jagadish. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Sanskrit book Advaita Charita states that Balaram, Swarup and Jagadish were the fourth, fifth and sixth sons of Advaita Acharya. Therefore Sri Advaita Acharya had 6 sons. Balaram, Swarup and Jagadish, being smartas or Mayavadis, were rejected by Vaishnava society. Sometimes Mayavadis pose themselves as Vaishnavas or worshippers of Lord Vishnu, but actually they do not believe in Lord Vishnu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For they consider demigods like Lord Shiva, Durga, the Sun God, and Ganesh equal to him. They are generally known as Panchopashaka Smartas, and one should not count them among the Vaishnavas. Balaram had 3 wives and 9 sons. The youngest son of his first wife was known as Madhusudan Goswami. He took the title Bhattacharya and accepted the path of the Smarta or Mayavad philosophy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur notes that the son of Goswami Bhattacharya, Sri Radharaman Goswami Bhattacharya, refused the title Goswami because it is generally meant for sannyasis, those who have taken the renounced order of life. One who is still in family life should not misuse the title Goswami. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not recognize the caste Goswamis because they were not in the line of the 6 Goswamis in the renounced order who were direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, namely Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Bhatta Raghunath Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that the Grihastha ashram, or the status of family life, is a sort of concession for sense gratification. Therefore, a Grihastha should not falsely adopt the title Goswami. The ISKCON movement has never conferred the title Goswami upon a householder. Although all the sannyasis we have initiated in ISKCON are young, we have awarded them the titles of the renounced order of life, Swami and Goswami, because they have completely dedicated their lives to preach the cult of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions that not only do the householder caste Goswamis disrespect the title Goswami, but also, following the principles of the Smarta Raghunandana, they exhibit great foolishness by burning a straw image of Advaita Acharya in a Shraddha ceremony, thus acting as Rakshasas and disrespecting the cause of Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is the guide for Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that sometimes these Smarta caste Goswamis write books on Vaishnava philosophy or commentaries on the original scriptures, but a pure devotee should cautiously avoid reading them. Amagyana timanandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshu ummanitam jena tasmai sri gurave namaha. Mukam karoti bachalam pangum langhayate gurimyat kripa tamaham vande sri guram dinataranam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. I offer my respectful obeisance under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls. By his grace, even a blind man can see stars in the sky, a lame man can cross over mountains, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. Excuse me. So, Hare Krishna. We are sometimes asked, is Gaudiya Vaishnavism monotheistic or polytheistic? Are we worshipping one supreme being or many divinities? And it's a fair question. And of course, by careful examination, we know that we are most definitely monotheistic. We are worshipping Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. But Krishna has many wondrous expansions. And a famous verse is there to corroborate that, especially for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Eti chamsa kalo pumsam krishnastu bhagavan swayam indrali gakalam lokam mridayanti yuge yuge. All the lists of the incarnations of Godhead submitted herewith are either expansions or plenary expansions of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord appears whenever there is a disturbance caused by the enemies of Indra. So, many different wonderful personalities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but His Grace, Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, has identified, to the best of my recollection, 33 different avatars of Krishna who are mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course we know 10 are considered most prominent, and they have been listed by Srila Jayadev Goswami in his famous song, Das Avatar Stotram. And of course we chant after every arati one of those personalities in the famous Keshavadrita, Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare. So those principal personalities, 10 expansions of Krishna. Of course, Krishna is also there at the top of the list, along with Balaram and Lord Ramachandra, Lord Parashuram, Lord Narasimhadev, Vamanadev. These are just some. Anyone can remember any of the other? Lord Buddha, thank you. Yes, Buddha Sariya Jaya Jagadish Hare. These are some of. Is it Prithu Maharaj? Anyway, we've done okay. We've remembered a few. So, which brings us to Lord Advaita Acharya. And of course, in our Pancha Tattva, 3 of the personalities described as Vishnu Tattva, Lord Gauranga, Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Advaita Acharya Prabhu. And Advaita Acharya has many wonderful names and pastimes. One I came across yesterday is Gaur Anna Thakur, which means he who brought Gauranga to this earth. And he invented it's thought between 50 and 60 years before Mahaprabhu advented. So he's considerably older than Lord Caitanya. And to make it even more fascinating, he has dual roles. He is the incarnation of Lord Mahavishnu, who of course we know is the first expansion of Krishna, who appears in the causal ocean, and from the Lord's breathing innumerable universes emanate from the pores of his transcendental body. So he is that incarnation, the Advaita Acharya, incarnation of Mahavishnu, and also he is the incarnation of Sadashiva. And I came across a really wonderful verse from the Gauragana Deshtipika, which describes Lord Sadashiva. So I'll just read this here. In Braja, he took the form of a cowherd boy and danced alongside Krishna. This is stated by Bhairava in the Shiva Tantra, and I'll quote, "Once during the Diwali festival in the month of Kartik, my guru, Shankaradev, saw Krishna dancing with Balaram and the cowherd boys. He became desirous of becoming a cowherd boy himself, and he began to dance, spinning like a whirling wheel for Krishna's pleasure." End of quote. Thus, by Krishna's mercy, Sadashiva plays two different roles in Braja. In one, he is Shiva himself. In the other, he is a cowherd boy. That's the Gauragana Deshtipika, 77 to 80. So, this is the personality, Advaita Acharya. And of course, like Mahavishnu, Lord Shiva is a very wonderful personality, topmost Vaishnava, Vaishnavanam Jata Sambhu. And he has many different abodes, just like well-to-do folks in this world can have a number of dwelling places. They may have their principal home where they do their business, but then they like to go on holidays to other parts of the world. So in the same way, we know that Varanasi, Benares, Kashi, three names of the same famous city in India, considered by anthropologists to be one of the oldest cities on earth, if not the oldest. It's famous as the city of Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva and Parvati resided there for long, long ago. But then Lord Shiva and the treasurer of the demigods, Kuvera, are very good friends, and Kuvera also offered Lord Shiva Mount Kailash and to reside there. So that is, of course, I think, occupied by China nowadays, formerly still Tibet. Very, very difficult to get to. Some of our devotees in recent years have made, and of course, every year during the summer months, many pious persons do make a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash. Very, very holy place. So, and of course, Lord Shiva has many other abodes throughout both the material and spiritual realms. So, this is the wonderful personality of Sri Advaita Acharya appearing in this, not to miss out, you could say, on Krishna's pastimes. The great devotees always want to be present, to serve and to participate in Krishna's different incarnations and pastimes. And Advaita Acharya Prabhu is a wonderful personality. It's said that he was quite well-to-do because his grandfather had been a very senior advisor to a former king of that particular part of Bengal. And the king highly valued Advaita Acharya's grandfather's advice in running the kingdom. So much so that he awarded him land and great opulence, and Advaita Acharya inherited 2 homes, one in Shantipur and one in Navadvip. And his home in Navadvip was very close to that of Srivas Thakur. So he was there participating in all of Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu's childhood and youthful pastimes. One of the most important associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's interesting that when Madhavendra Puri passed through Shantipur, he only spent a few days there, and Advaita Acharya took the opportunity, seeing what an exalted personality Madhavendra Puri was, to beg him for initiation. And he was awarded that by Madhavendra Puri. And then it's said that Madhavendra Puri just travelled on, and it doesn't appear that maybe there was any more association between the two, which is quite interesting, because Madhavendra Puri was a very renounced sannyasi, and he travelled constantly on his own from place to place. But he had many wonderful disciples who initiated in different parts of India. And of course there are many, speaking of guru-disciple relationships, 3 of Advaita Acharya's sons were staunch followers of their father and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and one of those is very famous. His name is Achyutananda. And when Achyutananda was only 5 years old, he astonished his father and mother and other elders by rejecting the notion that how was it when he heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a guru. We know Ishwara Puri initiated him, and then later on when the Lord took sannyas, he had a sannyas guru. So this was all astonishing to little 5-year-old Achyutananda, who protested vehemently. How is it? He's the Supreme Lord. He doesn't need a guru. So the elders were astonished. 5-year-old boy has such a realization. So yes, a little Achyutananda is a very famous son of Advaita Acharya. And what was also intriguing and fascinating is that Advaita Acharya did make a pilgrimage to Braja at one point, and it's said that he was actually the original discoverer of the Madan Mohan deity, or Madan Gopal, also known. And he was discovered by Advaita Acharya, and he was entrusted to a Cholbi Mathura Brahmin. Cholbi, I think, means one who knows all the 4 Vedas. So in ancient times, there were many pundits who memorized at least 1, 2, 3, and if they were exceptionally brilliant scholars, they could memorize all 4 Vedas. So this famous deity, Madan Mohan, I think perhaps one of the original deities installed by Brajanabha, the great-grandson of Krishna, 5,000 years ago. But then later on, Srila Sanatana Goswami took responsibility for worshipping Lord Madan Mohan. So that pastime is there. And back to Achyutananda, he's described as the incarnation of Kartikeya, or one of Lord Shiva's 2 sons. Anyone know the name of the other son of Lord Shiva? Ganesh, thank you. So, and Advaita Acharya worshipped his shalagram, Shila. Some say Nrsinga shalagram, and some of us who have been to Shantipur have had darshan of that same shalagram Shila that Advaita Acharya Prabhu worshipped with great intensity, with water of Ganges and tulsi leaves, and petitioning most earnestly for Krishna to appear. And it's said that during his petitioning, he acknowledged that his own divinity, but as a partial expansion of Krishna. And he said to Krishna that we need you, the full Swayam Bhagavan, to appear, because this is too much of a task even for me. You have to come in person yourself. Because Kali Yuga is just starting already, 4,500 years into Kali Yuga, the atmosphere had become so degraded, even in the pious land of Bharatvarsha, even in such a holy place as Navadvip, famous university town in India. So you, Krishna, have to come. So, and of course the Lord did appear. In one place, Prabhupada does refer to Advaita Acharya as the president of the Brahmin community of Shantipur. Very honorific title, and of course we know, we'll read one after another, the wonderful pastimes such as Advaita Acharya insisting that Namacharya Haridas Thakur be offered the Shraddha Patra, or the plate of Mahaprasad, which is generally offered to the most exalted Brahmin in the ceremony honouring deceased forefathers, which Advaita Acharya was observing on that occasion. But instead of offering it to one of the many Brahmins, exalted Brahmins present, Advaita Acharya gave that first offering to Namacharya Haridas Thakur, who wasn't, as we know, even born in any caste of the Varnashram system, but was born in a Mohammedan family. So, and he lived for 125 years, Advaita Acharya, so long, long life. It's also said that he met Vidyapati, famous poet in Mithila, and one of his two wives, I believe, Sita Thakurani, very famous, considered one of the most exalted Vaishnavis of the day, very dear friend to Lord Chaitanya's mother, Sachi. And Advaita Acharya specifically spoke on and taught Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. They were the two texts that he specialized in teaching. And yes, in all these different personalities, pastimes we see, such as Advaita Acharya accepting Madhavendra Puri, it's to set the example that in human form of life, every civilized person should or must accept a spiritual master. And his mood is, like others, Bhakta Avatar. He's enjoying his mood as a devotee. Even though he's the Supreme Lord, he's enjoying that wonderful mood as a devotee. But Lord Chaitanya was very respectful to Advaita Acharya, worshipping him and offering him all respect at every time. But this was really annoying to Advaita Acharya because he understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be Krishna himself. So sometimes Advaita Acharya, in order to be chastised by Lord Chaitanya, would pretend to teach Yoga Vashishta, or impersonal philosophy. And Lord Chaitanya went there on one occasion and severely chastised him, actually even grabbing him and shaking him. And because he was so much older, Advaita Acharya's wife, Sita Thakurani, she intervened and stopped Lord Chaitanya. He's an old man. Leave him alone. So, but Advaita Acharya was in complete ecstasy because that was the mood he wanted. He wanted to be subservient to Mahaprabhu. So, which brings us to the and another, as well, we're on the principal pastimes, of course. The other famous, so many, we'll read one after another, just giving a brief overview. But of course there was some contention, some friction between Mother Sachi and Advaita Acharya when Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra's first son, Lord Chaitanya's older brother, Vishvarup, left home at quite a young age and took sannyas suddenly. So that, and because Vishvarup had been going and hearing Bhagavad Gita classes, and specifically from Advaita Acharya regularly, daily, and had no interest in material enjoyment, Vishvarup's described as an expansion of Lord Nityananda. So when Sachi and Jagannath Mishra noticed that their younger son, Nimai, was also going and hearing from Advaita Acharya and spending a lot of time with him, Sachi specifically became very anxious that already one of my sons has left home and become a renunciant, and perhaps by the preaching of Advaita Acharya my other son will do the same. So in this way she committed an offence in her mind towards Advaita Acharya, so much so that eventually that Mahaprabhu, being omniscient, could detect that. And later on, when the Lord fully manifested his divinity and started his Sankirtan movement, some devotees questioned why Mahaprabhu had not awarded Krishna Prema to his mother. And Lord Chaitanya gave this as a reason that his mother had actually offended Advaita Acharya by even thinking that, yes, by his teaching, the older son had left home, and perhaps Mahaprabhu would also leave, which actually did happen. So it transpired, of course, that Mother Sachi was remorseful and all was forgiven, and Sachi Devi also was blessed with Krishna Prema. But these very deep esoteric pastimes, of course, went on during Mahaprabhu's time. So, which brings us to, inconceivably, that 3 of Advaita Acharya's sons became Smarta Brahmins. Not an insignificant thing, but there is a demarcation, as Prabhupada mentions here. They were rejected from Vaishnava society. The 3 sons, Balaram, Sarup and Jagadish. This word smarta comes from smriti. There is smriti and shruti. The original 4 Vedas, and then all of the supplementary Vedic literatures, such as the 18 principal Puranas, 108 Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. Narada Pancharatra. There is a very famous verse, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vinim Vina Ahaitaki Hare Bhakti Upatajeva Kalpate. That devotional service to Krishna which ignores the authorized Vedic literatures, which we've just mentioned, creates an unnecessary disturbance in society. So, in this way, there is a line drawn, you could say, between Vaishnavas, pure Vaishnavas, and those who wish to follow, especially in the modern world, the teachings of Sripad Shankaracharya, monism. Prabhupada was on a morning walk once in Hyderabad in South India. I think the year was 1974. With a large group, at least 20 if not 30 Western disciples accompanied Prabhupada to the opening of the Hyderabad Temple, and there was a big deity installation. There was also some land had been purchased on the outskirts of Hyderabad. So Prabhupada spent some days there, and some of our revered seniors were actually fortunate to be there on that sojourn to Hyderabad at that time. And on one morning walk in Hyderabad, an elderly Indian gentleman became very ecstatic to see Prabhupada accompanied by his Western disciples, and he came up to him with folded palms, very respectful, and said, "Swamiji, are you Dwait or Adwait?" And Prabhupada responded, "Dwait, Adwait, you have to eat. Therefore chant Hare Krishna." So, Dwait, Adwait, of course, Advaita means non-dual because he is identical with the Supreme Lord. Dvaita means dual. Dvaitavadis, Vaishnavas, believe there are two. It's not all one. There is the Supreme Lord, and then there are the living entities. Just as famously Madhvaracharya is often painted sitting in Padma Arshan, lotus position, with two fingers held up like that, indicating that there are two. There is the Supreme Lord, and then there are his infinitesimal parts and parcels, the jivas. So, might tell, this is Advaita's riddle to Jagannananda Pandit. Jagannananda Pandit was sent by Lord Caitanya to give comfort to Mother Sachi in Bengal, to share with Mother Sachi, as Lord Caitanya promised to do when he took up residence in Puri, because it's closer to Jagannath Puri. Navadvip is closer. So Jagannananda Pandit was in Navadvip. Advaita Acharya was very old by this time. So they were associating and conversing. So Advaita instructed this riddle to Jagannananda Pandit to take back to Puri to share with Mahaprabhu. And it goes something like this. And only Mahaprabhu could understand this riddle. Well, tell the madman that everyone has gone mad. Tell the madman that they no longer sell rice in the market. Tell the madman that the crazies are no longer good for anything. Tell the madman that this is what the madman said. Do you want the purport? Okay. No one is buying the rice of Krishna Prema. That's the first line. The crazies no longer are involved in materialistic life. Materialistic duties they've given up. The purpose for which Lord Caitanya was called is now complete. Lord Caitanya may now do as he wills. So that's the riddle of Advaita Acharya. So we have got a few minutes. I think we did want to just mention, we're going to really digress here. Is that okay? Is that because that's as much. I have got some other shlokas here, but perhaps the glories of Advaita Acharya, Prabhu. So I thought it might be a little interesting. We just happened to be in the United Kingdom when Queen Elizabeth II passed away. And it was a big event. She didn't live to 125 years like Adwaita Acharya, but she did live to 96. And she was much loved by many, not all, but many, many people were very upset, grieving when she passed away. And I just happened to be reading while in the UK. I was visiting family, and I did also attend the famous London Rath Yatra in Trafalgar Square, almost as big as our Brisbane Rath Yatra. Okay, it's a little bit bigger. But, and we visited the first Radha Krishna deities, which we always do when we go to London, Radha Londoneshwara in Soho in London. But it was such an incredible event, and we were reading the prayers of Queen Kunti from Srimad Bhagavatam in our leisure time there. So I was seeing through the wonderful Shastra Chakshus, how Prabhupada has enlightened all of us. We see the world through the eyes of Shastra. And the prayers of Queen Kunti, probably for many of us, our favourite part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And many wonderful prayers there, such as Janmaishvaya Shuta Sribi begins, famous. When Krishna was leaving after the great battle of Kurukshetra, he stayed on for several months more and saw Yudhisthira Maharaj coronated as the emperor of the world. But then eventually Krishna had to go back to Dwarka. So as he was leaving, it was the time that Kunti Devi was offering these beautiful prayers, that Krishna, those who are on the path of trying to improve themselves by good birth, janma, aishvarya, opulence, shruta, education, and Sri, bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. Prabhupada once said that Queen Elizabeth II was the most pious woman in the world. And there were several devotees at the time when Prabhupada said that, and I've confirmed that with Hari Sori Prabhu, who was there. He said, no, Prabhupada definitely said that. Most pious lady in the world. So we might question, how is that? Well, she had all these opulences, and there is a difference between material piety and spiritual piety, because we know we have many very devout, austere Vaishnavis all over the world now, and in India, very, very strictly following Vedic principles and so on. Janananda Maharaj made all of us chuckle one time. He was doing an initiation here at New Govardhana, and he mentioned that in countries like Malaysia, he regularly initiates elderly, very pious persons from Indian background. And when he asks them to vow to follow the four regulative principles, both he and his budding disciples chuckle, because these people have always followed the four regulative principles. So it's amusing for all concerned. But anyway, we see that Queen Elizabeth II, she had fabulous wealth. She was born in a very aristocratic family. She was actually quite pious in the sense that she was the head of the Church of England. And she was a very devout Christian. So she was a God-fearing lady. In her younger days, extremely beautiful. So she had all opulences. So for that reason, very pious. You don't get a birth like that without an enormous stockpile of piety. But Kunti Devi says these are actually impediments on the path of bhakti. And she says Krishna, you can only be approached by those who are materially impoverished. And that last line is there, which says like that. But that doesn't mean that devotees can't own things. But what they give up is the sense of proprietorship over this or that. We don't, We may refer, because it's custom, my wife, my husband, my children, my grandchildren, my house. I think we've told this before. We heard from one of our dear God brothers touring America from Vrindavan, staying with a very well-to-do family in the US, a devotee family. And the man of the house took Prabhu around the house, and everywhere he went in the house, and it was a beautiful home, and he was introducing his family members, introduced his wife. This is Krishna Dasi. These are Krishna Das and Radha Dasi, his children. And then confirmed by the lizard. But then the last room they went into was the deity's room. And Prabhu introduced that he is mine. When the curtains were taken back and he showed their family's deity, he's mine. So that is, of course, the proper understanding. Prabhu who lives in Vrindavan and takes devotees around on parikrama, been here a couple of times. Hare Krishna. This is what happens. Anyway, Vyasa is always reminding me, as he has to do, there are actually 5 defects: imperfect senses, committing mistakes, subject to illusion, and cheating propensity. And if you manage to live to 65, then the 5th defect, memory loss. Hare Krishna. And anyway, as soon as I finish the class, I'll remember his name. But anyway, so so yes, the passing of, and of course, Queen Elizabeth II had an extraordinary funeral ceremony. 6,000 people were choreographed, and not one of those persons in the various armed forces, 6,000 people were all engaged in giving her, an incredible send-off, you could say. So it was interesting. It was interesting. So that's a little Hare Krishna. So I might stop here, everyone. I hope that's enough for this morning. Any questions or comments? Yes?
Thank you very much for
Hare Krishna.
wonderful class. Is there any inside understanding to why the way to Acharya is not different? Krishna Tattva and his wife proposed the fortune, how they could actually bring on their sons to take on. We see Ramakashi that Paramahansa's son.
Yes, I wondered if somebody was going to ask that question. I couldn't find anything, so I can just sort of, sometimes it does, sometimes it does happen, as you say, Hiranyakashipu. Quite often devotees are born in demoniac families, and sometimes devotees have children which are really challenging to raise. So I couldn't find anything, Prabhu, to sort of clarify that. That wasn't, it's not something that I've read anyway, how that is. But maybe there is some, distant pastime in some, Gaudiya biography somewhere that indicates that. Why those other 3 sons. But one thing to take away, so to speak, is that Prabhupada does refer to them as Mayavadis, but smarter Brahmins. They followed some Brahminical standards. Mayavad was very all-pervasive 500 years ago in India. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas from Keshava Bharati, who externally appears as a Mayavadi sannyasi, because the Lord was anxious to take that renounced order of life, and that was what was most prestigious at that time, the Shankara Sampradaya, and he didn't want to wait. And yes, there were Vaishnava sannyasis in South India, in the Madhwa and Ramanujas, but Bengal is a long way from South India, and so for that reason. But that's all external, just as I can remember, just to mention his name again. When Janananda Maharaj came here for the first time as a sannyasi, I congratulated him. We had a hug in front of Prabhupada's Vyasa-san, and I said, "Congratulations on your accepting sannyas, Maharaj." And he immediately said, "This is all external," which it is in one way, but on another way, it's very internal as well. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay, right on time. Jai Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.